Hello, welcome to VR Roundtable, episode 130. My name is Gary, and joining me is Anthony, Steve, and Chris. We're back again. So we've had a couple of months off from the show, and this is probably not the show that a lot of people that actually like to watch or listen to want to hear about. But yeah, VR Roundtable won't be continuing after today. So we're going to try to make today's show as good as possible, and we're very grateful for everybody who is joining us in live chat, but also watching after the fact and on the audio podcast as well. The best thing to do, I think, just to start off, I think the best thing to do is to just go around and catch up with everybody who is on VR Roundtable. So, Anthony, I'll start with you. What have you been up to these past few months? You know, we can always see what you've been up to on VR 365, of course. But yeah, why don't you just give us an overview?
Yeah, I mean, just same old stuff. I returned to my day job, so that made me kind of busy, but still playing VR games and was doing VR 365. I'm on a little siesta on that right now until the end of the month. But I did go to OC6. I mean, that was freaking super cool. Got to see a lot of people. A lot of industry people were there. Got to rub elbows against like Norm Chan and Jeremy Williams, people like that just happen to be like feet away from you and stuff. So it's kind of surreal to see people like that and meet them in person and stuff. That was super cool. And I've mostly been bouncing from VR game to VR game to VR game, trying to stay current with things. So I haven't been enjoying things like you guys have, where you're just diving into a game. Kind of looking forward to that a little bit.
Yeah, so yeah, that's something we'll get into, of course. But Chris, I think it's best to go over to you next because OC6, you were there too.
Yeah, it was really cool because I got to meet Anthony. So it's funny because Gary and Steve, you guys met, and now Anthony and I have met, but all four of us haven't in real life. So it's kind of a funny thing. But that was definitely a big highlight for me, going to Oculus Connect and meeting all the VR YouTubers and streamers and everything. The event wasn't too great in terms of announcements or anything, but it was a good opportunity to be able to go. So that was really neat. Other than that, just a bunch of college work since I'm in senior year. So we're doing our capstone game, which is some sort of Quest title that we're trying to start working on here. And Quest is really hard to develop on. So that's been a lot of fun. So that's what we've been working on.
Good stuff. Excellent. Yeah. Steve, what about you? You've been relatively quiet over the past couple of months. What? Tell us about what you've been up to.
So, well, I mean, unrelated to VR. So we're a lot of projects around the house. So, doing VR Roundtable on Sundays, the show's 2-ish hours, and there's some prep beforehand and all that. And it made it hard to do projects around the house because usually you need to do that over a weekend. And so I've really backed off a lot of gaming in total and, did some home project stuff. But then I've also, embrace yourselves. No one get out the pitchforks just yet, but I've played some Pancake. So, it's really been mostly a bonding opportunity with my kids. They like VR as well, but they also like their flat games. And I played some Overwatch with my son, playing online together. And, so it's been a lot with my kids. We're going through Horizon Zero Dawn. So, yeah, it's been some of that.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, well, just to clarify what's going on with VR Roundtable before we do get onto this final show. The channel will remain open. Everything will stay as it is, and we're not going to completely close the door on it or anything like that. But we're not going to be doing the live show every week or anything close to that. But who knows, in 6 months, a year's time, if we want to get back together again and do a show, then we're leaving that option open for us. So, never say never, but for the foreseeable future, VR Roundtable won't be happening, unfortunately. But I think it's the best decision that we can make for all of us. I think it's a bit of a commitment to do this week on week. Anthony knows doing VR 365 every single day. I can't even imagine how he does that. Even doing one show a week is hard enough. But Anthony doing that show every single day is a little bit ridiculous to me. And he's done really well with that. But I think when we've all got families, well, you know, we've all got commitments and we've all got things that we need to do on a weekend. And we've tried to keep up with the show for the last 3 years, and it's been great. It's been absolutely fantastic to do that and meet all these people and enjoy talking to you in live chat. But it is going to, you know, inevitably these things come to an end, and that's what's going to happen. Has anybody got any thoughts before we move on to the show that they want to just talk about regarding that at all?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to really second up and stress what Gary just said. We are keeping the channel open with no future commitment. I mean, it could be 2 years and you hear nothing from us, but something big could happen 6 months from now, and it sort of reinvigorates us. So we really want to stress that we did not want to permanently close a door, but we also don't want to give the impression that we're necessarily coming back. So this seemed to be the best way to approach it. And and part of me, you know, speaking for myself, but I think this is the right decision for me and for us as a group, but also know that feelings and everything changes over time, and we just simply don't have crystal balls. We don't know what the future holds. Something could just trigger us and make us all want to jump back into this.
I was just going to say, once every quarter will come back. Now, that would be kind of cool, you know, just to kind of like the state of VR for first quarter, second quarter, you know, like 4 shows a year. But yeah, we can't make any promises, but maybe it'll be something like that. Or maybe there'll be like a huge VR headset, like some new technology or like a new player coming into the mix. And we'll just want to gather up and do an impromptu show just for the hell of it. You know, we reserve the right to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that could be really fun, especially if there's some big announcement around Christmas or something. Gary, people want to know what you were up to the past few months.
Yeah, it was pretty much No Man's Sky, to be honest. I've been playing, in terms of VR, I've been playing a lot of No Man's Sky. Actually, the other thing, and this, maybe I shouldn't even mention this, but I bought a Game Maker Studio 2 on Steam, and I've been really like diving into making my own little 2D platform game, actually, these past few weeks. But yeah, it's not VR related, but hopefully, you know, maybe that can lead on to some kind of VR development, because I'm really envious of you, Chris. You doing all this VR stuff. Yeah, I'd love to do that. But yeah, primarily it's been No Man's Sky in VR and a few other things, but not a lot really. I've been maybe a little bit too lazy. Okay.
With me.
Okay, so let's get into the show. So the first thing we want to get into is OC6. Now, obviously, this is a little bit older news, but we didn't have a show last week when it all broke up. So it's probably best we just very briefly go through some of these things that came out of OC6, because it's interesting stuff and it will have repercussions for the next few months going forward. So OC6, there were plenty of things announced, and it was mainly revolving around the Oculus Quest. There was not too much of the Rift mentioned, but there was the occasional thing, and we'll get onto that a little bit later on. So I guess the first thing, the big thing that I thought was announced was the Oculus Link, which allows a USB 3 cable to be connected to the Quest, and then you have basically a Rift when you connect it to a PC. So you have you've got a Quest, and if you want to play any PC games, then you can just connect it up to your gaming PC, and you know, by all accounts, it seems to operate pretty much like a Rift, which is something that so many people were speculating on for so long about this. Even before the Quest came out, people were thinking, you know, could this have that capability? And it turns out they've been working to do this for a while, and this will be coming out in November. So I'll definitely be trying this. I can't wait to give this a try. So, Chris, I'll go back to you first on this. So the Oculus Link, I know that you and Anthony spoke about this OC6, but what do you think about this? Is this, well, first of all, your thoughts on the Oculus Link, but also what do you think about this sidelining the Rift possibly?
Yeah, so I tried the Oculus Link the first day. I got lucky because they closed off the line and then they like opened it for a brief amount of time and I just snuck in there. It's crazy because there was like thousands of people here and they only had 2 Oculus Link demo stations and like each demo was like 15 minutes or something. So it's just really stupid. Like the whole way the event was set up was really dumb. Like all the lines were 3 hours plus. It was really dumb. But anyway, tried the Link. And I'd place it somewhere between like a Rift and a Rift S. Like obviously it's not running at full resolution like the Rift S does. Like the Rift S still does look better, obviously, which is good. I don't think they're really screwing that over too much. I mean, they are in some way, but I feel like it's kind of better for the whole industry. We can talk about that a little later. But it definitely looks, sharper than a Gen 1 Rift. So if you have a Quest and like a Gen 1 Rift, I mean, this is maybe an upgrade for you in some ways. Plus, the tracking's pretty good, pretty responsive. I know at the talk and what John Carmack said is they could actually get the latency down a bit from what it was when I tried it, maybe even less than the Rift S, which would be really cool if they ever got it to that level. But currently, it kind of has that effect. I don't know if you play Sports Scramble on the Quest, how if you like shake your controllers around, they go past where they're supposed to go, and like it's a little bit delayed. That's like the exact delay that the controllers feel like they have with the Oculus Link. So it's not really too bad for most games, but maybe for Beat Saber, you might like slightly notice a difference versus having it native. Other than that, like it's pretty good. You don't really see the compression artifacts. It's just running at a lower resolution. So I think it's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. So, Anthony, did you get to try the Oculus Link at all? Because one of the things I would ask you, because you've got the Index, you've got an original Rift, and you've got the Quest as well. What would be like Stormland or Asgard's Wrath? Would you take preference over like to use one headset over the other based on using the Oculus Link? Because one of the things I've been thinking about is I've got the Index, but I've also got a Quest. Would it be a preference for me to play Stormland on the Quest rather than the Index?
Yeah, it might be a good thing to try it on the Quest because of just the controller translation, when you're doing revive and stuff. Like when I get Asgard's Wrath next week, I'm going to fire up my Rift CV1. Like I played Vader Immortal Episode 2 on my CV1, and I feel like I want to play it there because I want the proper controllers. I want everything working right. And then if I try it later on Revive and everything seems to be working great, then that's just a bonus. Maybe it looks a little bit better in the Valve Index or something like that. But I like that pure experience that you get. I tried Asgard's Wrath with the Oculus Link at OC6, and I tweeted about it and I said I didn't notice any degradation whatsoever, but I need to clarify that because like before I actually went into Asgard's Wrath, you're kind of in like the Oculus store or like the home or whatever, and I did notice some degradation there, but actually being in the game of Asgard's Wrath, because Chris had told me that if you move your head around, like sometimes you'll notice like black and stuff, like kind of a sign of like artifacts and things. And I was moving my head around, I was moving around quickly and looking at the corners and stuff, and everything seemed super solid. I thought it was really good. I mean, I think it's like 90% of the experience. The weirdest thing about this, though, is I've always wondered, why would they do this? Because you have to think that they're probably losing a little bit of money for every Quest they sell, the smaller one. And so losing money, like why would they do this? Because somebody could get the Oculus Link and they could basically use their Quest as a Steam VR headset and then no money is flowing to Oculus. It seems weird, but like a conspiracy theory that was kind of going around the show floor is that we're moving to the Quest, every like PC VR is kind of withering a little bit. And so some people think maybe Oculus did this almost as an apology to a lot of the PC VR developers that have spent so much money, so much time, and so much effort bringing games to the Oculus Rift. And then a port comes to the Quest and has 300% improvement in sales. And so maybe Oculus is like, well, hey, devs, here we go. Here's a little bone for you, because now you potentially can sell Windlands 2 or whatever it happens to be to an entirely new segment of people. And that would be the reason why they're doing it. And even they might take a little bit of loss if somebody was just going to use it for Steam VR.
I want to jump in. Probably the second or third time I've heard this 300% improvement in sales. I don't know where that original statement came from specifically, but I've heard it referenced. What is being said there? Because if there's a game like, I don't know, like Racket NX that has been out for a long time, and then the Quest comes out, and from when did Quest launch? In May? So, you know, if it sees a 300% bump in sales from April to May, or from May to June, that makes sense. But I don't think it's saying that they've sold 300% more on Quest versus PC VR. Am I misinterpreting something?
No. From what I've seen, people have generally been referencing like the first few months of their sales on Rift, and then the first few months of sales on Quest, and it is dramatically different. I mean, a couple of them. I think there was Red Matter and. There might be another game as well that was referencing this, specifically taking it from the point of, the first few months of release, really.
Yeah,
Okay.
Super Hot as well. Like,
yeah,
they sell much more. I mean, it makes sense for a game like Red Matter. It kind of got lost in the pool of everything, but then on Quest, it just rose to the top because there's not that many games like that on Quest. But yeah, this is definitely has to be for developers. I mean, because there are the games that come out on, Rift and Quest, but there's also the games like even that Oculus has been funding, like Stormland and Asgards Wrath. And these developers are probably, pretty sad because, all the money's in the Quest and everyone's buying a Quest. It seems like almost no one has a Rift S. It's like a dying breed or something like that. So imagine spending millions and millions on a game and being like, well, it's too big to port to Quest because it's designed for maximum graphics, and now we don't have that market at all. So I think no matter how we got there, it's good for the VR community as a whole, because now there's going to be more PC VR titles that can be developed, and they have like a wider audience because people who have Quests can actually play them now, which is probably good for PC VR and for the VR industry as a whole. So overall, I'm not too upset. Like I was originally, I was like, man, I have a Rift S. I'm probably going to sell it. And that's probably still true. It's definitely still better than the Quest, but I don't really have a purpose to have both at that point. But for a lot of people, they'll probably still prefer having a Rift S.
So, Steve, just going back to you quickly on this, like overall, what do you think of the Oculus Link? And just following on from what Chris was saying, really, do you think it sort of negates the fact that we need a Rift S now?
Well, to an extent, definitely negates the need. I take the Oculus Link with mixed emotions. On the surface, I said for a long time before the Quest released that there needs to be a way to tether it to the PC, that there's no reason that any consumer has to buy 2 sets of lenses, 2 headset assemblies, 2 sets of displays. There's just no need to rebuy all that stuff. We're only talking about software. So I think it's a good thing in that sense. What kind of rubs me the wrong way is that it's now 3-4 months after release, I guess going on 5 months now, and it's coming out despite the Rift S. Like, what has happened in these few months? And it almost seems very intentional and planned and strategic by Oculus, that said they couldn't have announced this back at Facebook. What do they call it? Facebook Connect, whatever. Back when they, gave us the release date for the Quest, they could have said it.
Yeah.
F8, yeah. They could have said at that moment that, oh yeah, we're doing Oculus Link, but that would have been counter to selling some Rift S. So it really just supports my theory that the Rift S and the Quest are 100% separate teams, separate trains of thought, separate development. One hand's not talking to the other hand, and it's just weird to cannibalize your own product. Like, why even build the Rift S that most enthusiasts weren't looking for anyway, and then undermine it 3 months later, 4 months later? Like that it doesn't make sense. I don't understand the purpose of it. This should have been just day one. Oculus Link announced back at F8.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, I talked to one of the people running the booth who is from the Oculus Link team, and I was like, how long have you guys been developing this? And he's like, oh, we had a prototype of this like 2 years ago. I was
Oh,
like, really? Like, that's ridiculous. Like that really does make it feel like they were completely separate teams, because it feels
It
like they
does.
knew it was possible this whole time.
Well,
You know?
they certainly did not go from 0 to finished product in 3 months.
No.
Like they didn't
Yeah.
back in June go, I wonder if we can tether it. Like, no, of course they've been working on it.
Yeah, and I think it makes it clear the fact that like the Rift S, I mean, as much as I like the Rift S, and I've used it, and I used it for quite a while, and I thought it was a pretty good headset. But it is much as I like that, it does feel like that product was an amalgamation of people just saying we've got to get some kind of update to the Rift out there, no matter what it is. We've got to do that. Let's give it to Lenovo and let them manufacture it, and we can give it the Oculus name and do that. And that's not really anything against the Rift S. I think it's still a fantastic product, but I do think that is how they are handling this decision with the Quest and the tethered link and that kind of stuff. It does seem to make you think that the Rift S was almost a rushed product, perhaps. Anthony, have you got any thoughts? Like, do you see a need to get a Rift S and a Quest, or if you've got a Quest, is that good enough?
Well, I think if you're a brand new buyer, you would, if you were aware of this. That's the thing. There's going to be a lot of people that aren't aware of this thing, unless it, I mean, we're aware of it. We're aware of it on Reddit. Like, we all know this, but there's got to be people out there that just, they know about a Rift S, they know about a Quest, but maybe they have no idea that the Quest can now do this. But if they did know, why wouldn't you buy a Quest? Like, why would you, like, if you were starting new, why would you buy a Rift S? Because if you buy a Quest and you buy that cable, then you basically have everything that the Rift S brings to the table. Now, I know the hardcore purists, you're dropping frames to 72 and other things, right? And the comfort is a major issue, but if you could figure out the comfort, but you would have a straight up beautiful wireless standalone headset that you can use for all kinds of things, and it would also be a PC VR headset. So it's the best of both worlds. It's $399. It's got all that technology that's built into it. The Rift S doesn't have anything built into it. It does have like an extra camera, but ultimately I think that's the way to go, right? So yeah,
My thought would be, like, if you only want PC VR, if you know you're only going to use PC VR, get a Rift S. If you're only going to use mobile, then get a Quest. But if you want to have the option to do both, get a Quest. And that's the thing. It still makes the Rift S slightly more redundant than it otherwise would have been, I think.
Yeah, and I think they really should have, right after that announcement on stage, it's just been like, Rift S is now maybe $50 cheaper or $100 cheaper or something, because it just doesn't feel right that they're the same price anymore. I mean, it never really felt right to me, because like Quest has all this extra stuff in it, and I get that they might be selling it for a loss, but like at least it was okay because there were separate ecosystems. But now it's like, come on, like I think I could recommend a Rift S more if someone's like, man, I can't afford a Quest, but I have like a really good gaming PC. I'd be like, oh, the Rift S is like $250, get that. But I can't do that. So
yeah. Okay, so one of the main things that was announced at OC6 was the finger tracking update for the Oculus Quest as well. So this allows you to completely abandon the touch controllers if you've got a Quest and play games and experiences with purely finger tracking. And, I think we've got some impressions, actually. I think people that like Steve and Anthony and Chris, I think you both tried this, so it's probably best we go over to them first. Anthony, what did you think of the finger tracking when you tried it?
Man, I wish I got the good demo. I got the crappy Farmers Insurance demo. I tried to get the good demo. I ran over there. I got in the line, and it was a nightmare. And then I saw the footage from Tested. This like super colorful Wizard World demo was so cool. But yeah, I did get to try it, and I was amazed. Honestly, I mean, I know it breaks in certain conditions, and if it gets out of your field of view, you gotta like awkwardly move your hands up a little bit higher to get it back into the field of view sometimes and stuff. But for the most part, I mean, you have your fingers, you're twiddling them around, you're moving your hands around, and there's almost like very little lag. It seems pretty freaking flawless. And I've always argued this. I said in this modern era, we need to get a situation where if your controllers are in the other room, or if your controller needs a battery or something like that, and lots more to talk about that, right? But if you've got a problem or your controllers are not around really quick, you should still be able to grab that headset, bam, and you should be able to go into VR. And if you just wanted to see something like Alumet or Dear Angelica or Henry, or if you wanted to go into some like simple kind of thing, or Netflix, or something like that, bada boom, bada bing. It should work very easily. I'm an advocate too, where I think when you put on your VR headset, I think it should immediately show you your world, your real life world. And then there should be like an icon that says go into VR, and then you bam, and then you choose to go into VR. So you put the headset on, so you're not discombobulated. You're seeing your world, you see your hands, and then you choose to go into VR. And I just think that's like the future of VR headsets, especially when you want to like give it to a soccer mom or something, trying to give them a controller with a bunch of buttons. It's just so much easier.
Yeah. So Chris, you had some experience with the finger tracking as well. What did you think?
Yeah, and I'm also so upset that I didn't do the good demo. And what sucks is the guy at the farmers insurance thing was like, go to the innovation lab because tomorrow it's going to be packed. I'm like, oh man, and I didn't have enough time to. And then it was, because everyone realized like they got the bad demo the day one. But it was still, like Anthony said, it's really, really cool. I think I was a little more negative on it just because it was a little bit laggy. Like it runs at 30 frames a second, the Quest cameras for tracking it. So it's not like, you can't obviously do fast movements or anything like that. But
just sorry, just to interrupt very quickly, Chris, did you ever try Leap Motion at all?
Yes.
Did you try that? Just like a quick comparison, how does it hold up against that?
Yeah, so the thing with the Leap Motion is you can like overlap a little bit and your hands can like interweave, which is cool. On this, they're like completely separate. Once like any of them touch the other hand, that like loses tracking, but I'm sure that can be fixed in software. This is early days with that. But what is nice is there's none of that jank that the Leap Motion has, where like your hands a fist and then you see your like fingers do this in VR or whatever. Like when your hands a fist, it really stays solid, and same with like any action that you do, it looks like perfectly fine. I think one of the coolest things for me is I did a snap with my fingers, and like it looked like the animation was real, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So really impressive. I think they said that they were going to try to get this up to 60 frames a second or maybe higher. Once they do that, I think that will be amazing. And once that lag is a little bit less, it'll be way more magical than it is now. But already it's just neat that there's no additional hardware needed. So yeah, I think I'm more impressed now that I thought about it more. Just in the moment, I was like, man, I can't, like put one hand over the other. They don't work like that. But if you know that out of the gate, I think it's much more impressive. So.
Okay. Steve, so like finger tracking, I don't know if you've ever tried Leap Motion at all, but just finger tracking within VR anyway, it's quite it's something that I've always loved the idea of. And when I tried Leap Motion, I thought it was fantastic. It gives you like that next level. You really do feel a little bit more immersed. For whatever reason, it hit me harder than I expected. So I think this is pretty welcome. But what do you think like going forward with the Quest and the software support for this?
So that's a recurring theme for me is show me the content. I think I agree with Anthony, and I think it may in a way even be limited to the scope that he defines. Like when you're going to go in and watch Crow the Legend, you don't need to strap controllers to your hands. You don't need to fool with that at all. So there's a lot of utility gain in that simplicity, and I think it will work well there. Beyond that, if I think of a game, like there's no way I don't think at least that we're gonna play Windlands or something with hand tracking, because will it be accurate enough, and more importantly, how do you locomote? Like you don't have like a thumbstick, you don't have a touchpad, you don't have actual, like it's going to be limited to only your hands. Like you're going to be really represent a lot of VR games where you're just floating hands in an atmosphere, because that's what it will be. So I don't see it for the time being as a big gaming thing. Maybe it would be pretty cool with like No Man's Sky, like when you're in the ship, but then that also adds some more ambiguity. Like, you know, how do you take your controllers off and go back and forth there? But, so I see it in the way Anthony describes, and I would be fine for that. I think one of the bigger aspects of this announcement, though, is the fact that it's not coming, or so far they've said they've not mentioned it coming to Rift S. So it continues that theme for Oculus and creating this divide and making the Rift S the redheaded stepchild. Sorry, Chris, I hope you don't have a stepdad. I've always got to get my zingers in, and I came up with that one on the fly. But like, I hope that it does come to Rift S. Like, there's no reason in my mind, and I really think Oculus should say something. Like, it's okay that it's behind the Quest. You know, if they were up there and like, and we're bringing hand tracking to the Quest and blah 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 blah, and then just have a little asterisk on the slide, or make a quick little comment that says, oh, it's also coming to the Rift S in the future. We're just running behind on that development. We don't know when it's going to be ready, but you know, we'd like to bring it to Rift S too. Like, if they just say that, you know, and that may not be their intent, it would help not create this sort of Quest is eating the Rift S sort of feeling that they gave off at OC6.
A quick comment just on the Rift S aspect of it. The reason they can't, I personally don't think they can bring it to Rift S, and it has nothing to do with technology. It has everything to do with, there would be the haves and the have-nots. You have everybody with Rift CV1, they have no hand tracking whatsoever, and then everybody with Rift S has hand tracking. And you could say, well, you know, at least we're giving some experiences to people that do have Rift S, but I just don't think Oculus wants that to be a thing. Like they don't, that's a headache they don't want to deal with. People on CV1's like, oh, this is unfair, man. You're bringing this technology, like we can't play that. Like, you know, where's the backward support? You know, give us a leap. You need to come out with an adapter now or something. I just think it's a headache that they don't want to deal with. And then one other quick thing I want to say is, was anybody else freaked out by Mark Zuckerberg on stage talking about, we don't need controllers anymore? Like, it almost sounded like he was thinking to the future where there would be no controllers. And I'm like, no, wait a minute here. Look, I love this hand tracking for all the simple stuff. It's a great idea. It's perfect for that. But you take my controllers away, no freaking way, man. I need rumble. I need buttons. I need, like, I'm not going to go pew, pew, pew. No. Remember in the old days with Xbox and Kinect, the PlayStation guy was like, pew, pew, pew. I feel the same way. No way.
Yeah, the point is what they've said time after time, the like Oculus Connects, is the fact that any software that comes out will be able to be played, like all the software that's available on the CV1 will be able to be played on the Rift S and any future headsets. They've said that going forward, but they've not necessarily said that going backwards. And I think there will inevitably become a day where you simply can't play games on whatever future headset Oculus bring out on the CV1. That will happen. Whether, I mean, I take your point, Anthony, whether that's the time now or not, it's probably not the time to do that.
They're already dropping support for the CV1. If you damage your cable, you can't get another cable. Yeah. I expect the looking back at the CV1 to be very minimal, especially if the scope of hand tracking is what we defined it as, mostly, you know, launching Alumet and those types of playing around in your Oculus home environment. If it's limited to that, then I don't think they would look back at the CV1 that much. I don't think it matters. And I think any consumer is not going to really whine about that in any meaningful way. You'll always have the one crazy guy bitching and moaning about something, but I think in general, there won't be a big public outcry from CV1 owners that have had 3-4 years of a good quality headset complaining because some new down the road future tech in a fast moving startup industry is missing something.
Okay, a few other points to hit on OC6. We're taking our time today, aren't we? But let's rattle through these. So, Facebook Horizon. This is like the social app, which is, I guess, some kind of replacement to Rec Room or Altspace or VR Chat. This is Facebook's own proprietary social application, which they are going to launch. And this looks pretty interesting to me. So you can go in, you can create your own things, you can play games with friends, and that kind of stuff. Everything we really want. And this could potentially be the first step onto a kind of Ready Player One kind of thing that we would all love to happen. But it's very much a first step. When you look at the trailer on this, it looks like pretty basic for now, but I'm interested to try it for sure. Chris, what did you think of Facebook Horizon?
Yeah, it was funny because when they announced this on stage, like no one really clapped too much. Like no one seemed to care. It was like an awkward silence for a moment in the show floor there. But I think I share what you say, that it's pretty cool that Facebook is finally doing something, and rather than nothing, that's probably better for everybody if they're trying to do this kind of thing. Pretty cringy video they showed on stage of like all these like soccer mom kind of people in there or whatever. That was funny. But I think it'll be really neat. Maybe like I do get into games where you can build your own worlds and stuff. I know you can do that in Rec Room currently, but this could be another option for people. And if you log in with Facebook, at least you got this cool new world. And I don't think that's actually that big a deal. People keep being like, I'm not going to log in with Facebook. It's like, it's already a Facebook company anyway. Like you already have Instagram and you already have a Facebook. I think people who refuse to log in with Facebook to their Oculus is kind of weird, because you already use all the stuff. So that'll be cool. I'm excited. Anthony and I are going to get closed beta keys, so maybe if we have this Christmas show or whatever, we can talk about it.
Yeah, the Steve, just on that, like the trailer, just talking about the trailer, because it was a bit strange. Like I'm just looking at the trailer now, and you've got a woman sitting down wearing the Oculus Quest, drinking something out of a straw while she plays this game. It's not going to happen like that. It's a little bit ridiculous. Everybody knows that. And the trailer, although I think from one angle, very much a mainstream angle, it could get people excited for it. But for anybody that has got any kind of technical knowledge or an enthusiast, it looks a little bit ridiculous, didn't it?
Well, yeah, like I've kind of always said that we many times throughout the history of us doing the show, we've had the commenter on the video or someone in chat say, well, VR is not just about gaming. VR is not just about gaming. And I've kind of always thought that Facebook, being the social media company that they are, the product of Facebook itself, the acquisition of Instagram and all that, I've always felt that it was weird that they didn't really have something in that space for VR. And I've always thought that there should be. When we think of the Quest, or when I think of the Quest, one of the arguments that I make and may make in further detail later today even, is that its approach to gaming within VR is sort of mobile in essence, with the difference being mobile gaming success is because people already have smartphones. They didn't buy an iPhone to play games. They bought the phone because it does all those things, and yeah, it can play games. So what is going to make the soccer mom buy a Quest? What is going to make grandpa buy a Quest? And if they're not interested in gaming, what's really going to make them shell out $300, $400, $500 for a Quest? Well, something like this could be it. Now, I'm not convinced that what I see here is going to do it in its current form, but I think there has to be the non-gaming social something for the Quest and for VR as a whole, if we expect non-gaming people to give a damn about it. And I think this is an attempt at that, but it is really quirky and weird. So I support the idea. I question the execution.
Just before I pass it over to Anthony, there was I listened to a podcast this week in tech. I'm sure a few other people listened to that as well. But they very briefly spoke about this, and it's almost like a dismissive angle that they have. It's like these avatars have not got legs and they look weird, and who's going to want to spend time in this kind of stuff? And it's really disappointing to me when a company that is putting this much effort into trying to get some kind of semblance of a metaverse is just getting dismissed absolutely and completely, really, from the mainstream tech and gaming media. So as much as I don't know whether I want to spend that much time in here in its current form, as Steve says, then I think it's good that they are doing this nevertheless. So Anthony, gaming science teacher, did say on here as well, just in chat, I hope they don't crack down on the real identity thing, which is something that has been rumored or maybe even confirmed. I'm not even sure. But if you want to go into Facebook Horizon, you have to log in with your Facebook account, and you have to be, your real identity is Facebook demands, really. Whenever you log in on Facebook, you have to log in as yourself. You can't create like an alternate persona. You have to go in as your real name and that kind of stuff. Would that concern you at all, Anthony?
No, I think that is where we need to go, actually, because see, the problem you're going to get with all of these sorts of things, I'll never forget that one experience I had in Rec Room where some Japanese lady was like giggling and walking around, and like 4 dudes were just straight up abusing the crap out of her virtually, and I mean, nothing was happening other than like verbal abuse. And I don't think she understood what anybody was saying. But this is the thing that we see in all of these platforms, because if you have anonymity, I can't say that word for whatever reason, but if you have that, you feel like you can get away with murder. If you can have some kind of fake name, fake avatar, you can do all kinds of racial stuff. You could just go crazy in there. You could act a fool. You could try to grief the hell out of people, right? And if this type of platform is really going to work, you got to figure out some kind of way against that. And if it's your real, like if somehow somebody could look at your real picture, like they click on you, they can see your real Facebook picture, your real name, then I think that limits that to a degree. It's not going to completely eliminate it, because people are going to create fake accounts and stuff like that. They'll figure out ways around it, but hopefully it would eliminate maybe 80% of it, which could be enough. One other thing, though, about this whole Facebook Horizon thing, I have a couple of thoughts about it. One is, I kind of thought that if Facebook was going to do something like this, I thought they would wait until the technology was truly there to do it proper, because I worry about the poisoning of the well type of a thing, where you come out with something that's kind of cool, but it's not really where the metaverse needs to be, but it's kind of halfway decent. And so people try it. They're like, oh, it's kind of cool, but it's nowhere near what I thought it was. I was kind of thinking that Facebook would wait like several more years, maybe for Quest 2 or something, where it would actually have like those advanced avatars with the heads and like some kind of actual, like the body tracking stuff that they showed, where you're almost like a real person that's in this space. And then when you can get to that point, then you're not poisoning the well, because I think if somebody tries it, they're inside there, they're like, wow, oh my God, I didn't know this was possible. I'm looking at my buddy and he looks almost like my real buddy, his face is moving, everything, his body, it's incredible. So I have a little worry about that. And then the last point I wanted to make about Facebook Horizon is I really wish when you turned on your Oculus Quest or your Rift, you go immediately into that. Like there is no home. You go immediately into Horizon, and then you can also choose games and stuff, and you go into the game. But you just like almost like PlayStation Home or something. But you start there. That's where you start. You already start in a social platform.
Mm. One thing I would love them to do is to make any multiplayer game work smoothly, which I know it's a technological limitation, because you go in Rec Room on the Quest, you go in all of these other things which are multiplayer on the Quest, and they don't run smoothly. There's constant hitches. And, if they can sort that problem out, because this is going to be probably used primarily on a Quest for a lot of people.
One of the things that was good that they shown, and it wasn't specific to Facebook Horizons, was Boz was on stage and he was talking about watching the Clippers game with his dad, and the way that he went about to do that. That's just purely conceptual. That's not something that they're offering in this exact way, but that the linchpin of that, like when I look at that and I think of it, I'm like, there's value, there's real tangible value here. Like I travel for work sometimes. It would be awesome. Me and my wife, we watch the Colts. We're NFL fans, and it would be awesome if I'm overseas or out of town that we could do something like that together. The reality, though, then is that if we tried to do that, we would be hit with a can't be logged in to your account in 2 places to view whatever the video feed is, or this content is not available in your area. And I bring all this up because a lot of that type of sharing of media is outside of Facebook's control. Like, Facebook isn't going to buy rights to the NFL or to the NBA, I don't think, or Netflix. Like we're still going to be bound by the services that each of these places provide, and that's the bigger constraint. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to watch content from another country or while on the road. There's just all sorts of random rules and stuff about it, and it's going to be the same thing when we think of like Google Stadia. Like, there's going to be limitations and tricks and just crap that goes along with licensing and streaming, and I don't know how someone like Facebook, who's trying to offer this social thing that brings people together to do things such as consume content, how they get around these other hurdles in the industry.
Okay, so just to wrap up all our thoughts on OC6, I think it's safe to say that this year was very much focused on the Quest, and Rift. There were a few things that were announced for PC VR, but not really announced. Just sort of further information on things like Asgards Wrath and like the Respawn game, the Medal of Honor game. So. There wasn't too much really there, unfortunately, for the Rift. So Chris, let me go over to you. It's pretty much blatant, wasn't it? Like this year at OC6, it was all about Quest. And do you see that as being any kind of representation of what Oculus think going forward? Do you think it's all about standalone now?
Oh yeah, of course it is. It's where all the money is. That's where all the potential new people are. I think kind of the PC VR sector is at least close to being tapped out. Like, there's not too many people who are still buying Rifts at this point. Like, everyone I know, at least like in my group of friends who could have a Rift, has one already. So it feels like that market's not as expansive as like anybody can just buy this one thing. So I think it makes sense, and I think it's the right choice to focus on Quest. Once we get to like Quest 2, it'll just be like amazing, and hopefully there'll be all this other cool stuff. And it'll probably, I saw someone comment that they'll probably have to still support connecting to a PC because like they're not going to remove that in future versions, which is cool. So there's always the possibility of plugging in and getting more power from a PC. But I think from like the hardware standpoint, yeah, it's going to be standalone first, which makes sense. I like that kind of. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, well, I think I agree with you actually, but I think that the next generation will be focused around this idea of having a standalone HMD, but also one that can be connected to a PC. It feels a little bit like the Quest has been sort of hacked in some ways to get it to run on the PC, and it's not been, certainly not a primary concern, but it's something that they could do, and they decided to help out both people that bought the Quest, but also developers. But I do think like the next one, like the Quest 2, will be a standalone, and it will also be far more integrated to PC VR. At least, maybe I'm just hoping there. Anthony, what do you think?
Well, here's what I think. I really wish we had another Oculus, another company that was as aggressive as what Oculus is doing in all facets of VR. We only really have them. That's the problem. Okay, we have Sony in console land, but they're making all their money off Pancake. And so the VR aspect of it is just they're dipping their toes in the water. They want to like stay with that. But we don't have another Oculus, and that's the problem. That is the real problem here, because what I'm seeing based on everything that's been going on is the funding for high-end AAA VR games that are really based for PC VR, like Stormland, like Asgard's Wrath, that is a thing of the past, I think. Now, I'd love to be proven wrong. And Jason Rubin did say that they're going to make less bets, but they're going to make bigger bets. And so if we hear an announcement of a big banger of a PC VR game that is really a Quest game, it's not a Rift game. It's not a watered down thing. If we hear a new announcement for something like that, that would be incredibly encouraging, but I'm not expecting it. And even Medal of Honor, did you see what the Medal of Honor guy said? He said, but I really love the Quest. At the end, he was like, yeah, no, Medal of Honor is for the Rift, but I really love the Quest. I bet your bottom dollar they're going to water that thing down and eventually get it running on the Quest. I actually played Medal of Honor. I grabbed a champagne bottle. I was looking at it and I'm like, the textures, I'm looking at the textures everywhere and I'm like, yeah, they could probably water this down for the Quest. And of course they will. They've spent millions upon millions upon millions to pay Respawn to do this, but now the Quest is their baby. That deal was signed before the Quest was their baby, but now the Quest is their baby. And so all games, basically what we're looking at in the future is we're looking at Journey to the Gods, Face Your Fears 2, Sport Scramble, all these games that are designed on the Quest and then they're up converted to the Rift. Now, the good news is developers are going to get better and better at doing this. They're going to get more familiar with doing it and having the high-res textures and maybe a little bit more advanced AI and things for the Rift version. And so they're going to get better at this. The bad news is the hardcore graphics whores out there that just want this technology pushed as far as possible, you're getting boned in a major way, man, because it's really going to slip. Now, you're getting Asgard's Wrath next week, and that is the pinnacle. The graphics on that game, unbelievable. You're going to get that next week, and you're going to see what can be done when a lot of money and a lot of time is thrown at something, but then you're not, other than Valve. And so Valve has a couple of games, right? But Valve isn't funding anybody. They don't have a $250 million treasure chest that they're passing out to everybody. That's the difference. We don't have a Pepsi to Oculus's Coke. And that hurts because now Oculus is moving standalone, and it's the right decision. As much as I'm a PC VR gamer and I want to see, and I am a graphics whore too, but it's the right decision. They're making the right decision. It makes all the business sense in the world, but graphics whores will suffer, period.
I don't think it's graphics whores. I would be okay with Stormland on the Quest if it was cel shaded and looked like Windlands and it was stripped down graphically. It's the scope of the game. And when I think of all these Quest games, they're all arcadey, 1 hour and I'm over it type content. Not 100% of them, but there's a lot of that, and I don't see that pattern changing. So for me, it's not just about graphics. Of course, I love graphics. I focus on the visuals probably more than anything. But I would be entertained by a good game is a good game, and I would be entertained and enthused about a good game if it was simple textures, cel shaded, whatever. Like Borderlands is cel shaded. I know they do a lot with it, but anyways, my point is, I don't think it's about the graphics. I think it's about the scope, and I think they're being very intentional with the scope of these games, and it's not specifically a funding thing, and it is. I think Oculus is making the mistake at looking at mobile and saying that the Quest and the standalone can follow this up-arcing, trending upward mobile path. And I think that's a mistake. I really do. Chris, you mentioned saturation of PC VR. I've not looked at the numbers in many months because, well, we weren't doing VR Roundtable. Why would I? But at some point, we'll call it 6 months ago, there was about 2% of VR penetration on Steam for people that had a VR capable PC, and that's looking at a GTX 970 or better. So there's a huge group of people where the cost isn't the concern, where the PC isn't the problem because they already have it. And I will I guess we're doing state of VR somewhat, but I will die on the hill. I will fall on the sword that it's about content. It is 100% about content, and everything that we're talking about is leading to the aspect of content, everything from the hand tracking and all of it. And I agree with Anthony that there is no Pepsi to the Coke in a sense. The way, I guess I agree with that, but I think Sony is it's sort of like the Pepsi, maybe not all the way. They're somewhere between the RC Cola and the Pepsi. and cause Sony actually, I mean, I think if we look at the numbers, Sony's probably sold more than Quest, Rift, Vive, Cosmos, Pimax, Index, all put together. And they make competent games, and they're in that space. I think what we're seeing now with Sony, I hope, is really the tail end of the PS4 generation. So they're kind of caught in this in between. I don't know that's going to happen, but I could see Sony stepping it up with PS5.
Okay. One quick comment, just because I was really Debbie Downer with what I was spouting out. But the one positive thing I will say, if you are the graphics whore guy, is even if we don't get any more AAA, we don't get Stormlands, Asgards, Medal of Honor, we don't get these big, gigantic behemoths of PC VR games, we still have stuff like Jet Island, Primordian. We still have great games that are made by much smaller developers that have incredible graphics and are pushing boundaries. And so, like, if we had to just live with like Red Matters and Jet Islands and Primordians and smaller stuff like that, something like Pros that was made by a bunch of tiny little developers, like, I think, it's not the end of the world is what I'm trying to say. But I mean, it hurts. It still hurts, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've got a few other news stories to talk about. One thing, I do want to quickly thank Fleek Roger for giving us some keys, some games keys for everybody here. Not for everybody, of course, but a few people will be getting some pretty good game keys here. Steve, how do you want to handle this? How's this? How are we giving these out?
I'm just going to throw it in the chat. Sorry if you're listening to this after the fact, but I'm running the show. I'm doing all these things and making it more difficult. I'm just going to put it up in chat. So your reward for coming live is you have that opportunity. If you get it later, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and of course, spread your thanks to Fleek Roger for giving these away, because these are pretty good games that he's giving away keys for here. So yeah. Okay, so HTC Vive Cosmos. Now, none of us have actually tried this, unfortunately, but we are going to quickly comment about some of the reports that are coming out about this. And I think it's pretty lukewarm overall with the Vive Cosmos, at least from some of the videos and some of the reviews that I've read about this. I know that Ben Lang, Road to VR, he actually delayed his review of the Vive Cosmos due to problems with tracking when he used... he wasn't in daylight, basically. It wasn't that there wasn't natural light coming into his room, and when he started using, he turned on the lights in his house, it wouldn't track correctly. I don't really know too much of what's gone on since then. I know he reached out to HTC to get some clarification on that with the tracking issues. Upload VR, in their review by David Jagno, he said that they last around 2 to 3 hours, the batteries in the controllers, that is, because I know there was a lot of issues before release about sort of rumors about them only lasting an hour or something like that. But they do last 2 to 3 hours. It's not that much better, if I'm being honest, especially considering the fact that they have 2 AA batteries per controller. So that's a bit of an issue. Overall, I mean, just from what I've seen, I think overall the Vive Cosmos seems to be okay. It's not blowing people away by any means, but it seems pretty good for what they're offering. But it's not really it's not getting people excited. I think that's the takeaway. It's not getting people excited. Anthony, what did you think?
Gary, I think you're being way too kind on the Vive Cosmos because, again, like we haven't actually tried it, but based on what everybody's saying, see, the other thing you have to remember too is a website like Upload VR. There's only so many large corporations that are going to spend money on advertising. HTC is one of them. Okay. So they can't write an article just totally destroying HTC because they want to have ads that are on the sides, big Cosmos ads at some point. So they can't burn their bridges like that. But if you read that article, I mean, everything that I've seen from the Vive Cosmos, any respectable company on planet Earth would have not brought this product to market. It would have stayed on the drawing board, that like you work on controllers and you're like, yeah, we've been working on the controllers and we've got up to like 2 hours and 45 minutes on our battery life. You got 2 batteries in each controller. It's only 4 Duracells every 2 hours and 45 minutes. We think we're doing a pretty good job. Now, any respectable like organization would be like, sorry, go back to work. That's unacceptable. We're not releasing a product like that. Hell, if it was 6 hours, if they said that the Vive Cosmos controllers last a solid 6 hours, that's not even acceptable. And that's double. That's more than double. And that would not be acceptable, period. There's 4 batteries. Every 6 hours, you got to put in 4 batteries. That, to me, like, forget everything else. It's just been eliminated from consideration. Who is going to use this product? I have no idea. Then you go to the lighting aspect. Okay, so now we're in a situation where you need to have gigantic bay windows everywhere, and you better live in an environment that has a lot of natural sunlight coming in, or you better live in like a warehouse that is just well lit, like ridiculously. I mean, this is just, it's hilarious to me what's going on. You got a small sweet spot that people are struggling with. You got the flip hinge thing where the downside of having a flip up hinge like that, you can't get your eyeballs close to it. Norman Chan was talking about he wished it really had a button that allowed it to slide in and out so you can get a little bit more FOV there. The controllers are crazy heavy. Some people are having problems playing Beat Saber and stuff. To me, it sounds like, I mean, God, and this goes back to my point of wishing there was a Pepsi to Oculus's Coke. And I don't know what we would call HTC. It's like Orange Crush or something. It's way out on the outside. And man, but it really does boggle my mind that they would actually bring this to market, because they sell a lot of headsets to VR arcades. Like they sell a lot there. And I don't know what VR arcade is going to buy this. You're not going to want to be switching batteries all the time. One good thing about a VR arcade, though, they probably got a lot of fluorescent lights everywhere, so they might have it well lit enough to actually use the thing.
Well, this is their product for consumers. This is not their LB VR product. They're going to keep the Vive Pro is still there, and the Vive Pro I, if you want to go down that road, but I feel pretty different. And here's the basis for how I feel very different than you on the Cosmos. No, I'm not buying one. So it's not like I love the product. But when I think of all the VR heads, I look at the HP Reverb. HP, Hewlett Packard, and they couldn't get it right. Valve can't do thumbsticks. Pimax can't make a product that everybody can use. Oculus, they didn't get their tracking right on day one, on launch day, and they had a huge, we were how long were they working on the Quest and the Rift S? That was a 4-month turnaround. So, but my point is, what I'm saying here is nobody is doing things that are acceptable across the board. No one is perfect. Like the index controllers are inexcusable that your damn thumbsticks don't work. They don't click. That's inexcusable. How did they ever come to market? How did HP get the dang Reverb out there with all the problems it has? So when I look at it from that perspective, I don't think the Cosmos is that far off, and it's only a few days old at this point. And I think most of these problems can be fixed with software, including battery life. I've seen iPhones, I've seen many products get a firmware update and battery life improved. So I don't think the book is closed on the Cosmos. I will say, here are things that I like about the Cosmos. I like that it is inside out with a path to outside in for the high end consumer. I like that they didn't try to reinvent the controller in terms of format. Like it looks very comparable to Oculus Touch. They didn't go this crazy Knuckles path. I like that that it's not as expensive as the Index. You know, it's not as cheap as the Rift S. So they're aiming for this middle ground, and I think it's a good strategy. I'm a really big fan of the idea of having a cheap, somewhat more affordable baseline that you can then upgrade your experience on without kind of being pot committed. If you don't want Index, but you want something more than the Rift S, like you're sort of screwed. And if you buy a Rift S, you're stuck until you buy some other headset. Like there is no upgrade path in there. And I think it's really cool that the Cosmos has that. So I think it needs some time for them to sort out some of their software. I think they'll get their tracking closer. They don't have the resources that Oculus has, but, to be hard on them, like this isn't like, I've been very hard and critical of HTC. I'm not necessarily a fan of their brand. I don't like their lenses, but to me, this isn't the atrocity that was the Vive Pro. Like that thing wasn't overpriced in an unexcusable way. Like the Cosmos, I think if they give it a little time for the software to be improved, I think you'll have a competent headset here, understanding that it does have its constraints. Maybe the controller life, even after a few firmware updates, still isn't good. The smaller sweet spot still isn't good. But I mean, Index, Glare, like there's no one is doing it perfect. And until we do, I think we have to kind of keep that in mind when we critique a headset.
But Steve, the damn thing's $700. Like I think that's still unacceptable in the way that the Rift S is $400. And I can't see too many benefits in getting a Vive Cosmos over a Rift S. I mean, the audio is a big one for sure. IPD is a big one too. But now you can get a Quest. No, but
being able to play Lone Echo or Echo Combat, I should say, in Echo VR, competently.
I think me and my friends are just like shitting on HTC. To be honest, we like anytime they announce anything, I'm like, dude, this is terrible. And I feel bad because I want this competition to be good, and I want, these controller batteries to last a long time. But I mean, just looking at the system they went with, there's trade-offs, I guess. Like the upside is that you have full like RGB pass through, which could be cool for some stuff. But then the downside is the controllers are using like light, like the Windows MR controllers are, and those actually also go through battery life pretty bad, and these actually look way brighter than them. So I can see why battery is a problem there. I don't see who's gonna ever buy this thing. I could be wrong. There's probably people who hate Oculus and will just buy this because they can't afford an Index. But it seems like you either get an Index or you get a Rift S. I don't feel like this middle ground exists with this product. There's like too many things wrong with it. At least for now. I hope they fix it.
Them rolling in the wireless kit from the Vive, I think, you got to buy the adapter, and you're getting milked along the way. But the idea that if you had a Vive or a Vive Pro and you can step into this and you don't lose your whole ecosystem, you don't lose it all. I think that's a beautiful thing. So, sort of like Horizon, I'll leave my opinion at, I love the idea. I love the strategy. Don't love the execution.
I'm sort of rooting in some ways for HTC to get this thing right, to do some kind of headset that pleases everybody, because they just seem like a company that is invested in VR. They've done so much, and yet apart from the original Vive, everything else they've brought out just feels like it's felt a little bit subpar. It's not really met any kind of expectation from the community or VR enthusiasts, which is disappointing when you think, I want to support this company. I want them to do things right. I want them to make a product that I can buy and be happy with. But I've watched quite a few videos about the Vive Cosmos this past week. VR Gamer Dude, he got a Cosmos sent to him, and he did quite an in-depth video about it. And he was generally positive, but again, he was a little bit lukewarm on it overall. It's not like it's going to replace anything else that he's already got. It was that kind of impression. And also Virtual Reality Oasis, Mike, he got one, and he was talking about it in his review, and he was saying by the end of it, he was thinking like this is almost it's been rushed to market. That seems mad when this thing has been so long coming. It was announced so long ago. We've had so many weird marketing videos around this device, and nothing seems to have hit the mark. At no point during this process has the Vive Cosmos hit the right mark with the general consumers of VR, and it's disappointing. I want to like HTC with their VR headsets, but they're not doing a lot for me at the moment, unfortunately. Okay, so we can get on to Pimax. Now, this is pretty interesting because around the time of OC6, was it just after OC6 or just before OC6? I'm not too sure. But Pimax had some announcements for some of their newer headsets, basically updates of the headsets that they've got at the moment. So they announced the 8KX and the 8K Plus with the ruggedized versions, so sort of more hard-wearing versions of each of these headsets as well. So the 8KX is $1,300, and it's got a native 4K per eye resolution, which actually accepts a native 4K per eye input as well, which is pretty impressive because they're not running two cables, they're only running a single cable with this. It's got 75 hertz screens with a 90 hertz option if you run it at an upscaled resolution rather than getting the native resolution of 4K. It's got the RGB stripe LCD displays, and it will be shipping on December the 18th to backers. And then they've got the 8K Plus, an updated version of the original Pimax 8K. $1,000, launching on October the 30th, and this uses the upscaled version, so it uses upscaled input to 4K screens, which is exactly the same as how the original 8K works as well. Again, RGB stripe LCD, and it's got various refresh rate options: 65, 72, and 90 hertz. So yeah, two different versions of the Pimax. Steve, I'll go back to you first on this. So how's your Pimax holding up, and do any of these tempt you to upgrade it at all?
My Pimax is still doing good. Like it's doing better than my thumbsticks on my index controllers. So, Pimax is what it is. Like, a lot of people don't have a ton of confidence, and the company hasn't done enough to turn that around. And that's kind of sad. I still feel lucky that I'm in this small minority of maybe 25-ish to 30% of Pimax buyers that actually don't have distortion. We don't have hard numbers on that, but I'm in that minority, and for me, it's the best VR experience that I can buy today. These updates are pretty good. It still shows that they're evolving the product, but there is a strategy and a business sense that a lot don't like. They still feel slighted because the 5K Plus just came out. Now the 8K Plus is a better unit at a higher cost. So it kind of is what it is. It's more of a setting the AKX aside. It's more of just a general improvement. But with the same announcement, they announced all of the other accessories. It looks like they finally got a path in place to get all this stuff shipped out to the backers who are still not got their accessories. Really, it's just the Kickstarter milestones, and a normal product wouldn't have to do these milestones via Kickstarter. Oculus isn't doing that kind of stuff anymore. So the crux of it is that they're struggling with the controllers, so they're going to buy you index controllers or give you credit. Base stations were no fault of their own. Valve just locked up the supply for their own index headset, and a lot of people believe that's in part why HTC went the Cosmos path to get away from base stations, because there was no supply chain. You can't fault anybody for that if they can't buy base stations. So a lot. They're between the credits that the backers have and the ability to not take controllers and base stations and get a credit for those. It looks like I might be able, I have to see what the pricing shakes down, but I might be able to get an 8K Plus or an 8KX for relatively little cost to me. I might toy with it. I'm not dying for it. The AKX sounds amazing, and native 4K per eye. That's that's beyond HP reverb, pixel density across a much wider FOV. But I don't like, there is no, I'm not going to even be able to play the simplest of games on my 2080 Ti. And that's the bigger problem with the AKX is there's just nothing that can run it. But if I could get one for say $300, I might do it because that, you know, my net cost after all my credits and such, why not at that point? But I'm not confident that I'm going to get a ton of use out of it initially until NVIDIA is 2 generations from now ahead. And even then, I don't know that we'll be able to run 2 4K per eye. Like it's such a humongous GPU requirement.
Wasn't there something you might be able to shed some light on this? So I remember there was a little bit of annoyance from the backers of Pimax where they had backed a certain thing. It might have been the controllers or something like that. And then it turns out that they weren't going to get them for free. They had to pay an extra. It might not have been the controllers. I don't know.
No, it is the it was the eye tracking. So part of the Kickstarter milestones is they said we will include free eye tracking, and they had to bite the bullet, and they just came out and said, "Look, we can't deliver on that." You know, which is it pisses people off. I'm not too worried about it because I'm not personally sold that eye track like everything else we've talked about. Content I could have this amazing eye tracking thing. I just don't think something's going to really use it today. So I'm not too personally caught up onto it, but a lot of people or the eye tracking unit is $300 and it's sold I think for $150 or $200 to backers. So they get it at a reduced price, but basically Pimax said this solution that we've partnered with 7 Invents on to do this, it's not the same solution. It's not in the same class of solutions like the Tobii that's in the Vive Pro Eye. It required more development and more to do this at the wider FOV. And they said we would rather, instead of creating a inferior product and give it away for free to the backers, we'd rather create a better, more appropriate product and give the backers that offset. So I can't be too hard on it, but it is a sort of a unfortunate in between, and some people are pissed off, and I can't be mad at the people that are pissed off either. Like it's you know, I'll hold on to it, and it doesn't bother me too much because I'd rather have the better solution than getting something that's not very good for free.
Mm-hmm. Chris, Anthony, anything you want to add on this at all? Like the Pimax, these new versions, do they tempt you to pick one of these up at all?
I don't know. It's a little bit still too much for me, too much money. But I hear, you know, that the Pimax is really cool, and I still wish I got to try one. You know, there's probably someone like at Oculus Connect 6 who had one somewhere or something. That would have been neat to try, definitely. I don't know if you mentioned that. I saw this bullet point is actually the coolest one to me, is that the 5K Plus is getting the 120 hertz firmware update. Yeah. That's maybe the coolest thing for a small field of view mode only, it says. But I haven't seen like the news stories or anything, but that seems really interesting to me. And that would actually make me probably prefer a 5K Plus if I could, you know, run it at a small FOV and kind of get more of an index-like experience. That's kind of cool.
How are they doing that? How can they do that? Because the display.
Because it's the displays, like, so you get a display and it has a firmware on board. And if you're able to update that, so the limitation for most are the cable and the bandwidth, like the AKX, for example, the reason why it's running 75 hertz, the displays themselves are capable of more. They just can't fit 2 4K images beyond 75 hertz down that pipeline. The 5K, I guess they probably weren't thinking of going beyond 90 hertz. Like 90 hertz is the standard. And then the Valve Index comes out and they're like, oh, 120 hertz, 144 hertz. And it probably triggered something in Pimax to say, hey, we might be able to do something. And then they've gone down that path. So it seems Yeah, I small fauve. Like I've always used the middle fauve, but with No Man's Sky, I sort of had to go down to small fauve to get any sort of decent performance, and I got acclimated to the small fauve. Like it's still pretty good. It's bigger than the Index. It's still a really big fauve, and
The
it's
small
got that.
Vogue is fine. Yeah, I think it's
Um,
really good on the Pimax still.
so that gives me another sort of playing point, like when I'm playing Audica or something where I really the 120 hertz gives me something. I may choose to do that, and it really goes into the whole the sort of complications of the Pimax as a whole. You have to be willing to tinker and say, okay, when I'm playing Skyrim, I'm going to play at 72 hertz on middle fauve, but when I'm playing Audica, I'm going to play at 120 hertz on small fauve. And it's knowing your own preferences and be willing to screw around through the menus and stuff to accomplish that. And for a lot of consumers, they don't like that, and that's perfectly fine. Like Pimax is never in my mind going to be any sort of mainstream. Like 20 years from now, VR explodes and Pimax is one of the early companies still. Like I still don't think they're ever going to be a mainstream product. So it's kind of like the crazy people that build racing rigs and they get really into stuff. Like that's Pimax fits in there, and that's where I am in VR. That's where we all are in VR in a way, because we're crazy for it. So it just kind of is what it is.
Okay, well, we can move on to a couple of little smaller news stories that we've got down here as well. So the first one is to do with this Xbox VR Mat, a patent that materialized during these past few days. Anthony, I'll go over to you first on this one. So the VR mat, basically, from my understanding of looking at this pattern, it seems to be something that you can place in your living room, and then it sort of has sensors on it and that kind of stuff to protect you while you're in VR, to stop you from bumping into things and that kind of stuff. And I'm sure it goes beyond that as well. But what's your understanding of this?
Well, I mean, for me, it was just really interesting to see that there's anything going on with Xbox and VR, even though this may never come to fruition. And really, when you think about it, imagine somebody going to GameStop or something, and I know it probably wouldn't be at GameStop, but be like, yeah, I want the new Xbox Vision. And the guy's like, okay, I'll get you. Here's the Xbox Vision box. Wait a minute, I got to go get you the big mat, the big 8x8 mat or whatever. You know, it's in the back room. Here's this big rug you're going to take with you in the trunk as you take your Xbox Vision home with you. But still, I like this idea from a number of angles. First of all, I've kind of thought that if we had something that was called the VR floor, it would be a really cool thing, but it would cost too much money. How would you like get it in somebody's room and everything? Because I've imagined like if you had this floor that was like 3 inches off the ground, right? You're standing on it. And so that's your exact play area, and it has different rumble features, or, you know, it has different things that it can do to like add immersion while you're in the game. And so when I saw this Xbox VR mat, I was like, oh, there's the VR floor I've always dreamed about. But it does have proximity sensors. It has, I believe, some vibration that's built into it in different parts. And one of the things I was thinking about as I went back to the interview that Phil Spencer, right? Is that the Xbox guy?
Yeah.
An interview that he did with IGN years and years and years ago, when it seemed like VR was more of a thing and they kind of had to have an answer for VR. Xbox did. And one of the things that he said is the Xbox is a living room product. And as a living room product, we have concerns about wires. You know, people walking around, you know, I mean, that's your living room. And so having wires go everywhere, it's a big thing, right? And so what I was kind of thinking with this VR mat is maybe it could be wired to the console, but then I don't know how this would work, but what if the mat had some kind of like transmitter built into it that can transmit to the headset in a very short distance, you know? And so as long as you stay on that mat, it's going to work. Your headset would be wireless. and then the mat does other things in the game, the proximity sensor, so it kind of knows where you're at on the floor, and it adds a little bit of rumble, a little bit of tactile sensation. Now, the unfortunate thing is you do have to blow the thing up, you have to inflate it, and you have to wear socks. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But yeah.
You had me for a moment because I was like, "Oh shit!" Like, so I think I don't know. I saw the patent sketch and it shows a little camera above the TV and all that. Like, I think the news. I think you're right. I think the news is Microsoft Xbox is saying something about VR. So that's the news. This solution, I'm not sold on. I don't think. A lot of people don't have the space. Like, so is this mat, is it reconfigurable in terms of size, or is it always a 3 meter by 3 meter? Like, what if you have a bigger space or you don't have 3 meter by 3 meter? Like, I think getting into something that ties space in a non-flexible way is probably not going to be something that the mainstream tolerates. So not loving the mat, not loving the camera shown in this patent sketch, but loving the fact that it maybe Xbox is thinking about it.
No, I am loving the camera though, because dude, Kinect 4.0 or what, we need a super advanced Kinect, because what have I always wanted? I want the body tracking, goddammit. And Kinect actually could do skeletal models. And so if you imagine, although I think the original company that made Kinect, like I think Microsoft purchased them, and then I think they might have left somewhere else. I don't remember how all that worked out, but a much more advanced Kinect that could do way better skeletal tracking, and it could also maybe take an image of you. You know how we saw that technology that was at OC6 for like mixed reality capture, where it can kind of capture, it looks really weird and it's not really ready for prime time, but I can imagine that getting better and better and better. So not only do you have a body tracking thing going on, but like it has whatever outfit you're wearing at that exact time, because it's capturing that as well.
Yeah, the Kinect was such a cool thing, and it was like ahead of its time in so many ways. If there was just like 2 Kinects that had wide FOV and you mounted them like lighthouses, I'd love that, because like, that'd give you full body tracking always, and it'd be really good. I mean, you've seen people on VR chat that use like a Kinect already, but you just have to like face forward to have the body tracking there. I almost want to try that. That could be really cool. But yeah, the mat thing is pretty funny. Like, I can't imagine just like this giant carpet. Like, here you go. Like, I think it's a good idea generally. Like, if you had like mark the middle of your play space with some sort of material, so then like where it is, and like I think we all have done that in the past, and that's a pretty good way of solving it. So maybe if there's like some way in software to like say where your center is, and like you could put a mat down, like something tiny, that could be cool. I don't know. It's like you guys said, it's good that Xbox is maybe doing something with VR.
Yep. Yeah, I guess Anthony's right. That is the news story, really. Xbox, so at least some kind of semblance of interest in VR. So that's good stuff to hear. Anyway, okay. So just to finish off with our news, we've got The Walking Dead: Saints and Sinners. There was a trailer that came out. It's coming out on the January the 23rd, and it looks pretty good. I've got to say, yeah, I watched this. I think Anthony, you put this down in our show document, and I checked out the trailer. It looks pretty good. And Iron Man VR as well is coming out on February the 28th. Again, 2 relatively big titles. I think Iron Man has actually sort of been increasing over time after that first appearance at the State of Play, Sony's State of Play. A lot of people just thinking, this is just sort of a wave shooter or something like that. But I think it's expanded beyond that, and there's a lot more to it now. But yeah, The Walking Dead, Iron Man VR, 2 pretty big titles coming up. Anybody got any thoughts on this?
Well, I have a question regarding the Iron Man thing. So we get this date, February 28th, right? Which that's the last day of February, unless it's a leap year. So it's like Iron Man's a lot later than I think we thought. Like I always thought Iron Man was holiday. It's this holiday, right? And doesn't Sony need a big holiday game? What do they have? Because last year they had like Borderlands 2. Was Astrobot last year as well? I'm kind of mixed up in terms of when everything came out, but usually if you're a major VR platform, and I would say PlayStation VR is a major VR platform, you got to have a big game for Christmas, I think. And I don't know what they got. I know they have Golem, which finally got a release date in November. That, they've got that game Paper Beast by Eric Chahi's studio, Pixel Reef. But I don't know that they have a big tentpole release for the holidays. I always thought, I didn't even think Iron Man was that. Like, even if Iron Man had a date of like December 12th, I would think they still need a big tentpole release. What do you guys think about that? Like, what's up with Sony? I mean, they're supposed to be this like big VR contributor.
Well, I think they're in between their generation. They're all geared up into PS5 mode. They're getting their software and their release schedule dialed in for that. Off the top of my head, and even though I went back and played some Pancake games, I'm not Mr. Pancake, so sitting here off the top of my head, I don't know of a major flat game that they have coming out this holidays either. So I think, and if you look at their strategy, they pulled back out of E3 and they're doing this state of play, which is kind of similar to Nintendo's Direct. And I think with all of that, I think they are firmly in gearing up for PS5 mode, and whatever cards they have, they're letting them play out. Like The Last of Us 2 is next year. It's not holidays. That's probably their last big game, I would have to say. That and the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Those two are the last big games probably for the PS4 as a whole. And VR is kind of in that same place. So I really hope that around the turn of the year, I assume we're going to have some sort of conference that formally shows off the PS5, and then I hope VR is talked about in some way. Then, like, I still don't think that they'll do PSVR 2 and PS5 at the same time, but they can show some snapshots of the roadmap and say that we do have this stuff in works, and I hope then that Sony gets to be more like they were in 2016 and 2017, when they were really like driving a lot of the big VR titles, and they were doing a lot of things. And that's what I see. It's the end of a generation. And I think that's more of the story than a lack of a VR tentpole.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that does make sense. The only thing I would say is that because PSVR has been confirmed to work sort of cross-generationally over PS4 and PS5, then they could still continue that push, I suppose, if they wanted to. But maybe they're just holding back and waiting for the next generation of PSVR. I don't know.
Hey, Gary, can I ask you a question? I want to ask you a question about PlayStation 5. Okay, so we are going to have this time period where we're not going to have PlayStation VR 2 right away. PlayStation 5 is going to come out November next year, probably $499, maybe a little bit lower if we get lucky. Do you think there's going to be some kind of software title that will be on PlayStation 5 that is a VR game that doesn't work on the Pro, it doesn't work on PlayStation 4 at all? You've got to have a PlayStation 5. And if you have a PlayStation 5 and you have your original PSVR, you can play this title. Do you think they'll have something like that that would actually spur people to go in that direction? Because honestly, as somebody, I don't play flat at all. I don't play any Pancake, and there's no incentive. And I can't even imagine, like, I was trying to think, is there a game that exists that could get me to spend $500 on a PlayStation 5 just so I could play that game? And honestly, like, Grand Theft Auto 6 VR is like the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I understand it. It's difficult. I don't think they're, because the way they're sort of approaching this is when the PS5 comes out, it's going to be backwards compatible with the original PSVR, and you can play all of your old PSVR games on it, and then they're going to try and progress at that point. I'm not sure that they're really because their focus, of course, is not on VR. It's a sideline to them, an important one. I think it's an increasingly important one, but it's more of a sideline. They want the big titles for PS5 to be flat games, and that's okay. That's okay for them to do that. But I think eventually there will become a day when we are not satisfied with simply super sampled versions of these old PSVR games on PS5. We want it to really take advantage of it, and I think that will happen. I just don't think it's going to happen for a while. I think the PSVR is going to be compatible with the PS5 for probably a year after it launches, and then they're going to bring out an updated version, hopefully. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing they need to have it be compatible is the software and the HDMI port. And I mean, it's going to be a USB port of some sort. So they have everything they need for easily forward compatibility. And the only thing I'll say yes, PlayStation VR is a side note to the PlayStation brand. But likewise for Oculus. Oculus is a maybe even less significant side note for Facebook than PlayStation VR is to PlayStation.
Oh, you know how PlayStation VR, like it's 120 hertz, but I mean, the games are basically 60 and they're being like reprojected at 120. I wonder if somehow with the PS5, it wouldn't be reprojection, it would be 120. And so, like, because what I'm trying to say here is there's got to be other people like me that are PSVR gamers, but they don't play flat anymore. I mean, there's got to be people like that. Or maybe we're just such a tiny little niche, but I got to imagine there's got to be there's got to be more of us though, because like, what are they going to do to get me to spend $500? You know, they got to do something. There's got to be. I keep thinking of like the Sega 32X or something. There's got to be some kind of little like, well, your games are going to be boosted in some. There's got to be something, right? I don't know.
I think because I'll probably be getting a PS5 on launch, and I expect the PSVR games, to work better. I expect them to just look better on the PS5 for now, and then eventually. I think the difference is that it's more of a long game for them. When the PS5 launches, it's not about PSVR 2 or even a big game or anything like that for PSVR. I think it's rolling along with PSVR until they've worked out really what they want to do. Because let's be honest, PSVR, the tracking and that kind of stuff, it's so bad. I mean, it's not good, and they need to sort that kind of thing out before it really gets onto the next stage, in my opinion. Okay. Well, do you know what? I tell you what, shall we not even do games? Because all I've been playing is pretty much No Man's Sky, and that's pretty much it. So we won't do that, but we do want to finish off with a state of VR discussion just to finish up this final episode of VR Roundtable. Now, we started doing this show in 2016. This is 3 years ago now, and a lot has happened. A lot has changed in that time. And, you know, I think if we could take a step out of 2016 and look at where we are now, would that be would we think that we've progressed to the point we expected, or would that be something different? I don't know. So I want to just have a generalized discussion, a casual discussion with everyone. Chris, I'll go over to you first on this. And the question that I suppose I'll pose to you first is, if you could take yourself out of 2016, you know, you've got your Rift and you've used your Vive or whatever, and you could pluck yourself out of that time, pop yourself in 2019. Do you think we are where you expected us to be, or would you be a little bit disappointed? What do you think?
Yeah, I'd probably be disappointed because I was super hyped on VR then, and I think I'm a little more toned down now. Maybe that's because I'm older, but also just because, you know, we kind of understand the limitations of the tech and everything more. I think back then it felt like it could be more exponential with the technology, and because, I mean, we went from the Dev Kit 1, which I still thought was crazy good. I mean, you see it maybe there. You know, blurry as hell, motion blur, like all this terrible stuff, and not even 6 stop tracking, to the Vive. When I got the Vive, I was like blown away that big of a leap happened in that amount of time. So I think I was expecting that leap to go forward, and maybe we'd have like 4K per eye. I mean, hey, the Pimax is getting there, but you know what I mean? Like, I thought there'd be some other generational leaps coming up, but it seems like it's pretty hard to do VR well, and to, you know, that's kind of like a trend of Oculus Connect 6 too, is Michael Abrash was up there and he's like, I keep giving predictions, but they end up being very optimistic, and it's actually a lot harder than I thought for all this stuff. But with all that, I'm still optimistic, and I think we're all heading in the right direction. I think Quest is the right direction to head in the future of VR, to get more people in there. And the Quest 4 is going to be great, and I think at least VR is going to keep happening. It's not going to die out, we can tell. So that's a plus.
That's a really good point, because back in 2016, it was a little bit hit and miss. We didn't know what was going to happen. I think, from my point of view, I think it's safe to say that VR isn't going to die anytime soon. It's going to keep going, and it's also going to amalgamate with AR and this kind of stuff. And I think that's actually a benefit. As much as people don't want to talk about AR on this show or anything like that, I think that the two technologies are so closely tied that it sort of ensures the future success of VR by them being that way, because AR is going nowhere. In like 10 years' time, we are going to have some kind of AR glasses or something like that. And the fact is that VR is so closely tied to it that it can roll along with that success. Whether it's a mainstream success or not doesn't necessarily matter. I think it will always be there. And that's encouraging. That wasn't necessarily the case back in 2016. Anthony, what do you think?
Well, this has always been a good question to think about. Go back to 2016. Are we where we should be? And I'd have to say, in the standalone area, I think we're farther than I thought we might be. But PC VR, I will say it's a bit of a Debbie Downer, because the thing that I go back to is I've always been an early adopter, and this goes back way back. Like, I bought a Super Nintendo when everybody was playing Nintendo Entertainment System. I bought a Sega CD when people were just buying their Genesis. I was jumping on the Atari Jaguar, Panasonic 3DO. I was always the guy that jumped on the newest bandwagon way before it was ready for prime time, basically a beta tester. And then eventually the rest of the world would catch up. And I was always that early guy, right? And so when I got VR in 2016 with the Vive, I kind of thought it was going to be the same thing that it always was, where I was just early on. And eventually, all the flat gamers would come over and it would be the new VR era. And I was so completely wrong about that, because that is never, that hasn't transpired. And the interesting point to that is I think there's other people that have kind of thought the same thing. They bought VR, played it for a while, they got excited thinking, okay, the entire industry is going to move to VR. Then at a certain point, they had a realization, oh, snap, no one's moving to VR. This is a niche of a niche. And then there goes their Rift into the closet, and they're back on the couch playing Fortnite. And that's kind of the Debbie Downer scenario, right? But I do agree with what everybody's saying. VR is basically an unstoppable thing. And I know we said we weren't going to talk about games, but dude, Vader Immortal Episode 2, that one scene, I don't want to spoil it too much, but there's one scene where you're basically looking at a wall and something starts happening out of that wall. And the thing I'll say about that is we don't have the hardware to fully take advantage of what happened there. But I think once we do, oh my God, if we had like 220-degree field of view, photo real, incredible sound, I don't care about anything else. So I'm just talking about two senses, sight and sound. That's it. If we had perfect sight and perfect sound for what happens on that wall in Vader Immortal 2, I think any human that would witness that would be a VR fan for the rest of their lives. It's unstoppable in my opinion. So I still feel very good about that. And I think 20 years from now, we're going to look back on this era and we're going to think to ourselves, you know what? Everything did unravel kind of the way it had to unravel. It all makes sense.
Yeah. Steve, so just touching on a few of those points there as well. Well, let's go back to the original question. Let's go back to 2016. You got your HTC Vive, and then 2019. 3 years later, do you think that PC VR should be a little bit further along now, at least in your expectation? But taking also into that is Anthony's point about standalone VR, because I sort of agree. I didn't expect the Quest this early on, but I did expect PC to be further on. What do you think?
Well, we are not where I guess I thought we would be. And if I go back to 2016, I was still so new to VR and the concept that I was enamored by the simplicity of games. And the only thing that was sort of getting on my nerves about VR at that time was screen door and glare from the Vive. And so at that time it was like computers in the early 90s. Like, hardware was holding software back in a way. We needed hardware evolution. And hardware has probably evolved quicker than I thought it would. Including standalone, but I did not think we would have headsets that we have today that have, in a way, effectively killed SDE. I know screen door effect is there if you look for it, but it's not in my face. Like, I'm not bothered by the screen door on the Rift S, the Index, the Pimax. Like, to me, screen door is for the most part solved. What I find the most surprising, and it's really gonna be no surprise to anybody hearing my voice right now, is the content. I thought the games, like, early 2017, I got Resident Evil 7, like one of my favorite, maybe even my favorite VR game. And I'm coming up on almost 3 years later, and nothing has maybe surpassed it. I really enjoy Elite Dangerous. I really enjoy No Man's Sky. I really enjoyed Subnautica. There's a lot of games I really, really enjoyed, but there's not I expected more Resident Evil 7. Like, I thought we were going in that transition, and I thought maybe at this point in time, when Sony announces a new game, or when Red Dead Redemption, I'll just use that as an example. Like, I thought like that in 2020, like, all the mainstream stuff would be coming to VR. I didn't think that there would just still be this huge divide. And maybe Resident Evil 7 tricked me into believing that, because that was like one of the first major games to come out after PlayStation VR released. So we're not where I would want to be in terms of the software. The hardware probably a little further than I thought we would be back in 2016.
I think the divide you talk about there, Steve, is actually self-inflicted for the VR industry, because whenever, like in 2016, people were talking about how you can't convert a flat game to VR. It just doesn't work. Games need to be built from the ground up in order to work with VR, and that's how it just needs to be. So eventually we get to a point where we've got Hellblade coming out, we've got all of these flat games that are being converted, Fallout 4, Skyrim, and people really, really do like them. And I think if we'd had the attitude back in 2016, if the big VR companies had the attitude of, maybe we can convert some of these games over to VR, then we'd be maybe a little bit further along now than we otherwise are. I don't know, because I understand what they were trying to do. They don't want people to get sick, and that's a big deal. I understand that people that go into VR for the first time, if they throw up or feel queasy, then that's not a great look for VR anyway. But I think we could have sort of stopped that from being the case back then, or these big VR companies could have stopped that back then, and made companies think VR is a viable option, or at least some kind of addition to add to their game. But yeah, I don't know, and I hope that we do see more conversions, or at least now that VR is a little bit more established, that we'll see some more software companies that look at it as a viable option. Anyway, okay. Has anybody got any further thoughts on like just the general state of VR where we are now at the moment?
Well, I mean, I think we asked the same question: is 2019, and knowing what we know now, what is this time, October of 2022, what do we think it's going to look like? We don't have crystal balls. We're probably going to be really wrong on everything we're about to say. But sitting here and being really vested in VR and following this, there's not a lot of people that has followed VR as close as us. Is a small portion. So outside of working for a VR company directly, I don't know who would be best equipped to answer this question than people like us. What do we think VR looks like in 2022?
Yeah, I mean, I can.
Yeah, go ahead, jump in, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll probably be Quest 2 still, and to be honest, that's going to be a really nice thing to see, like an actual next gen of something, because everything is still kind of Gen 1 or Gen 1.5. I feel like in 2022 there'll be really something that's Gen 2, something that's different, and that excites me a lot. I don't think the games will be that much bigger or better than they are now. Like, I still don't think we'll have any of the like GTA 6 or anything in VR. As much as I love that, I just don't see it happening yet. But I do see hopefully big gains in social VR, and hopefully what Facebook is doing will actually start happening, where you can, watch like a show with your mom or your dad from far away, or have friends get together. It feels like that's such an untapped market still, and it's not even really being held back by technology. It's just the software at this point that isn't good enough to get us there. And I think that's a big focus of Facebook. So I'm hoping by 2022 they'll have something actually good with social, and that could be really huge. But I don't know, maybe gaming will be a little less of the primary driver by then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess Anthony.
Okay, yeah. So 2022, Quest 2 will have just launched about 5 months earlier. But here's the thing. I don't think Quest 2 is going to have like varifocal lenses and all this stuff. It's going to be the same thing that we have now, but it's going to be a much better Snapdragon. It's going to be built with like hand tracking and mixed reality AR capabilities, like full color pass through. It's going to have all of that. And that is going to be actually pretty freaking sweet. So that's going to be cool. They're going to have thought of things that they didn't know originally. So a lot of enhancements there, but not like major game changer. PlayStation VR 2 will have been released and it will be out there. Again, though, these things have to hit price points. So I think people thinking, oh my God, it's going to be for, all these crazy pie in the sky stuff. I think it's going to be much better than we had prior. It's going to have great tracking. They'll have figured some certain things out. So that'll be great. On the PC VR side, I think we will have received 2 of the Valve games, 2 of the 3 Valve games that were promised. Maybe not the 3rd, okay, but 2 of them will have gotten those. The PC VR scene will be a little bit weird, though, because it will be this like questicle scene. But I do think we are going to get a Grand Theft Auto or a Red Dead Redemption. By that time, I think we'll get one VR version, maybe a spin-off side story kind of version of one of those games. There will be some other games. In terms of like headsets, we'll have a headset where screen door has been completely eliminated, like no joke. Like that will be a thing of the past. Eye tracking will probably be something that is more standardized at that point. Hand tracking, more AR. I mean, I think there's going to be, the thing is, these VR headsets can do like 120-degree AR. I mean, I don't know if people really care that much because you're putting on a thing to do AR, but I think they'll be able to do that. I think there will be some interesting. Oh, actually, here's what I think might be a serious game changer for VR and AR that maybe we're not thinking about. And that goes back to Michael Abrash up on stage at OC6. They were talking about live maps. Remember when they had that video where it was like panning through like these offices and it was like, zzz, zzz. Dude, the live mapping thing is going to be a game changer like none other, because when we have legit live mapping, like people that have Quest 2s, I bet you it's going to be built in, and it's going to be like Tesla cars, where Tesla cars are driving around on the roads and the Teslas are reporting back to the mothership all the information, where it's figuring out what roads are craptacular and what roads are good, and it's sending all that information back, right? And so our Quest 2s are going to be like this, analyzing every little room. It's going to be figuring out all the rooms, sending all that information back to Zuck's mothership. And but the beautiful thing about that is room scale. The stuff that we're seeing with Quest, like Space Pirate Arena, these different ideas of more sprawling quest games. I think we're going to start to realize that more by 2022, where you could have a game that actually takes advantage of your entire house. You're walking out to the backyard, or you're walking upstairs, and you're still in the game. And it with live maps, it's going to know your walls. It's going to know where your chairs are. It's going to learn over time. Like I imagine with like deep learning neural networks, blockchain, it's going to figure out your sofas, your lamps, your tables. Like it's going to start to learn these things, guys. Okay, I know, pie in the sky, but
you're betting a lot on Snapdragon's or Qualcomm's ability to improve the Snapdragon. Like, I don't think there's enough headroom. Moore's law be damned. I think I'll answer the question, and we'll get back to our host here. Honestly, I haven't really put a lot of thought into this question, before asking it, but I'd say 2022 will be more of the same, and that will make me probably less interested. I guess I've lost some optimism about the, not that I think VR is going to go away. It's here to stay, but I've lost optimism in a way that VR will define what I'm looking for out of content consumption, for me. And listen to you, Anthony. You're still on aboard the train that's in process right now. And I guess my question in a way would be, if 2022 looks the same, where maybe there's some more tech, maybe there's some of that pie in the sky stuff that you talked about being true, but it's still niche. Are you comfortable with that? Like me, I'm not, I don't want it to be niche. I want it to be mainstream. I want it to be mainstream because those are the kind of games I want to play, but I want it to also be mainstream because there's something about the idea of knowing that my coworkers, or knowing that the guy across the street, like, also has a VR headset and actively uses it. Like, I don't want to be this niche thing that is playing these 1.5 hour experiences that I get bored over. Like, I want to be part of the mainstream pop culture in a way. I want the Ready Player One type thing. And the stuff and the things that the industry is focusing on doesn't seem to necessarily be taking us there. These hardware innovations, the trying to bring more of ourselves into VR while not addressing the ecosystem and the lack of people buying in. That's, I think, what bothers me the most. And of all those things you mentioned, they're cool. I would like to check them out, but I don't know that makes, Mr. and Mrs. Joe and Sally Walmart go, oh, now I'm jumping on this train. I want to know what makes Sally jump on the train. And, gaming science teacher is bringing up Sally, so that's what made me say that. But I'm interested in what makes them jump on the train so that it becomes a mainstream product. And I want to be careful. I'm not saying that I need other people to enjoy the same content as me before I'm able to enjoy it or anything like that. Like, if 10 million people play a game, it doesn't make the game better for me. I'm saying that because I want the investments to be there. I want good voice acting. I want good stories. I want good things that games like Red Dead Redemption and Cyberpunk 2077 are able to do. But I want to see them in 3D stereoscopy, and I want to see those worlds through a VR lens rather through a monitor lens. And we got all that digital art and all that investment made. And it's such a relative small step. I know it's complicated, but it's such a relative small step to bring that to the VR view. And we're just not doing it. And I don't think all those things you talked about, Anthony, get us there. They keep us down the existing train, whereas I'm wanting the train to sort of steer into a slightly different direction.
Your train is about 10 years away, unfortunately. So I think in 2022, your stuff is going to be in the closet. It is going to be collecting dust. You're going to have return to Fortnite or whatever. And
not that.
I understand. No. Well, but I understand
Fortnite.
What you're talking about. You're talking about like being part of the conversation, and you're in this niche of a niche, and you're not playing the battlefields or whatever it happens to be, the God of Wars or whatever it happens to be, like buddies at work, like the general public at large. And I used to be a part of that. Like before I got into VR, I listened to Giant Bomb, like you don't listen to Giant Bomb and they're not talking about the games I'm playing, and so, or like a lot of these really popular podcasts, they've never left. They're still in the flat world, and that's where it's at right now. The websites make money off flat world. VR does nothing for them. And it's a bit Debbie Downer, but like Abrash, remember at the end of his talk, he basically kind of admitted, the trough of disillusionment, everybody, we're in it, and it's going longer than we ever thought it was going to go. Jason Rubin got up on stage and was like, the time is now. We're starting to see the hockey stick. Okay, you're starting to see the hockey stick a little bit for Quest, but yeah, no, we're a niche of a niche, man. So, those triple monitor guys that just play like Assetto Corsa all day long with their triple monitors, that's what we are. That is what we are. So why would we expect Grand Theft Auto to come to a niche of a niche? So yeah, we're stuck in the doldrums, man. And so that's why I go back to stuff like Primordian and Jet Island, games like that. If those kind of games can hold you over for another 10 years, I mean, not quite, but like, kind of, if they can't, then yeah, you might go back to flat,
And that's, you're probably not wrong there. And the question I have is why? Like Cyberpunk 2077 is being made. Like it's like that can be ported. Like and it would probably be good. They're just choosing not to. And some of it is stubborn VR fans that say, I only going to play 1-to-1 perfectly mapped motion controller games. And some of it's that, but not everybody feels that way. So why is it? Like, and it doesn't need to be 10 years away. And I'll mention Resident Evil 7 again. Resident Evil 7 proved that it's possible, that it can work. And I think we're so niche that the developers aren't even considering it. And I'm not waiting for a technological revolution. I'm not waiting for computers to catch up or for some hardware or some chip that makes this possible. It's possible right now. It's just not being done. And that's what is going to change between now and 10 years from now that makes someone go, hey, let's bring Cyberpunk 2098 to VR this time.
Okay, one last comment, and then, of course, Gary and Chris need to talk every once in a while. But one last comment. So we could have said the exact same thing that you just said. We could have said that about Fallout 4 and Skyrim before they happened. Then they happened. See, I don't think just a straight-up port is going to cut it. I think you got to think about VR geometry. You got to think about hands and what you're doing in VR. A straight up port of like if we get Grand Theft Auto and all it is a straight up port, it's not going to do it. It's not going to move the needle.
But not doing it isn't moving the needle. That's kind of my point. I think the Skyrims and the Fallouts and the Grand Theft Autos, even if it's press button to open car door and you're not really doing it 1-to-1, I think that name brand and that attention and people going on Instagram showing little clips of mowing people over in GTA 6 in VR, I think that's trendy enough and catchy enough that people won't play those types of experiences and go, oh, but I don't open the car door with my fingers, with my knuckles controllers. I instead press A to open car door.
Your complaint is with Jason. No, your complaint is with Jason Rubin. What did he do with the 250 million? Like that would be my complaint. It's like you're giving this money to NXile and all these people. Maybe you should have just taken all of the 250 million and just said, Rockstar, do it, baby. Like maybe that would have been the better investment.
They invested pretty bad. Feels like.
Okay. Well, I had a few thoughts, but they seem a little bit redundant now, to be honest.
Go ahead, get them in, Gary.
No. Just quickly, I wanted to go through because gaming science teacher, she did say in chat about, like possibly in 2022 we could get like wireless streaming and that kind of stuff. I think, maybe 5G and that kind of stuff is not just necessarily a pipe dream, but it's further along, maybe 5 years away or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I think you guys have said it all. It was really good discussion you all had there, and yeah, I appreciate that. So I guess does anybody want to say anything else before we wrap up the final episode of VR Roundtable?
But Gary, what about you though? Like, would you ever put your stuff in a closet, or are you VR till the end?
No, I won't ever put it in the closet. No, I'm more enthusiastic about VR now than I was in 2016. Honestly, I absolutely love it, and I think it's getting better. And it's getting. If I could see, for me, if I could take myself out of 2016 and place myself in 2019 in No Man's Sky in a VR headset, then that would blow me away, and that's what I really want. And again, I guess this goes back to Steve's point about content, because No Man's Sky really does blow me away, and I think I want more games and experiences of more scope. That's probably the key for me more than anything. And similar to what Chris was saying, like on the Quest, and I think the games are great that we've got on the Quest, but things like that of more scope would definitely be welcome, of course. Yeah.
I mean, I'm in that, and I know I'm jumping in. Sorry, Chris, but this is the last few times I may be able to get my voice out there outside of Discord and Reddit. But I will keep using VR, like for Elite Dangerous, for No Man's Sky. I still got to play Skyrim VR. Like I'm about 15 hours in. I'm probably going to start over. And really, I've never played Skyrim in any medium outside of the 15-ish hours I've done in VR. So I'm going to do all those things in VR, and I will look for a game. If for some reason Resident Evil 8 came in VR, that's how I'm going to play it. But I guess for me, from this point going forward, I'm going to maybe look at some pancake games. Like, I rather play The Last of Us 2 instead of something like Jet Island in VR. Like, I'm gonna keep VR for the good, meaty, high scope games, but I'm not going to be stubborn, and I hope that doesn't come off the wrong way, but I'm not going to force myself to play VR and force games that in a way I start to see them as shallow and empty when there is other content. And I will say, as I've been playing some pancake games, I'm like, damn, I wish this was in VR, but I'm enjoying them more than a shallow game in VR for the sake of playing it in VR. And that's where my habit is changed, and that is something that I wouldn't have predicted in 2016. In 2016, 2017, 2018, I'm like, I'll never play flat games ever. And all of a sudden, I've changed. And that kind of is what it is. I don't have an answer for why it's changed. It just has.
I see what you're saying, because, I mean, it's hard, like, being in a gaming college, and everyone's like, whoa, I'm playing the new Call of Duty. I'm like, I'm playing, I don't know, like, I mean, I guess Beat Saber or something, or, like, Journey of the Gods, or, like, what's that? It doesn't matter. So it is a little annoying to not be in the forefront of, like, you can all, like, hang out and talk about the same thing. It really feels like everyone else is doing something else, and I'm just doing this weird thing and no one understands it. So that'd be really cool if that changed. I really hope Stormland, like, is really fun multiplayer, and I can actually get friends to play VR together, because we all have VR headsets. It's something. There's just not enough good games, I guess, to warrant it being social yet. So I hope that happens. That would be really nice.
I'm not. Yeah, I mean, like Steve, I'm not against playing flat games. I'll definitely be playing The Last of Us 2. That's definitely one that I will be playing. And there comes a point, like, just taking it back to my original point back in 2016, where the games that we had then were largely shallow, little, almost mini games in some cases. Whereas now that's not the case, and there is a broader variety of things to try. We've got Fallout, we've got Skyrim, Elite Dangerous. We had that back then, but it's improved over time. No Man's Sky, and all of these games of deeper scope. And I think that's the thing. When I play a VR game, I like jumping into just a little, like a game of Racket and X on the Quest or something like that, as much as the next person. But is that really why I got into VR? And I think the answer is no. For me personally, I just want bigger games of bigger scope. And I know that's not easy. It's not easy for developers to do, but that's really my dream of VR in the long term.
Hey, maybe the Valve game will save us all from everything, you know?
Will it be out by 2022? Next question.
It's out this year. Come on.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I guess we can wrap up this episode of VR Roundtable then. Thank you so much to everybody that has joined us in live chat these past 3 years and also commented on our videos, watched our videos, and also listened to the audio podcast as well. It's very much appreciated. We've had a great time doing this. We really have. And well, let me pass it over. So just to wrap up everybody's thoughts on this, Chris, I'll go over to you first. Is there anything you just want to say just to wrap your thoughts on VR Roundtable?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really, really good run. Yeah, I had a blast doing this show, and I think it kept all of us in the loop more than we would have been otherwise, which was great. And it's great to, keep everyone else in the loop about all this tech stuff. I'm still going to try to keep, in the loop on the Reddit and everything, but I feel like I'll never be as on top of things as I was with this show. Like I said last episode, it was great that you guys invited me on full time. I remember I had one episode as a guest and you're like, hey, you guys want to join? I'm like, yeah, sure. So that was like a big thing. And I've been doing it all through college, which is crazy. And now I'm almost graduated. So like time passing. That's crazy. Anyway, it's been a good run.
We could say we put a kid through college.
He did. He's made 2 VR games or something.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Steve, go ahead. Is there anything you want to just share before we finish up the show?
No, other than it's just been an amazing experience. I met some friends, and I think I wouldn't have, like, to Chris's point, I don't think I would have been in VR in such a way if this show didn't tie me to it. Like, we all had VR headsets before we met each other, and we were on the train, but having this camaraderie and this other thing to do with VR helped kind of pull us along. And the last 3 years were pretty awesome. And I'll always be thankful for that. And if my face is never on YouTube again, and this is the last thing I'll say, I'll just say I'm thankful, and it's an amazing opportunity. And I really thank the audience as well, because it's until you do it, like, you don't understand that the comments and and what that really means. Like, even listening to or reading what you all are all typing in the chat, it makes me think in this moment, we shouldn't be doing this. We should keep going. We should keep going. That's how much of an energizing thing it is. So, thank the audience as well. All the comments that we've gotten here on YouTube and on iTunes and all that also kind of, is pretty amazing to know that we in some way have done our part for VR, and in some way hope that we've made the VR market bigger and better, and that we've contributed to the community. It was a great opportunity, and I'm once again very thankful.
Okay, Anthony.
Yeah. I just, echo everything everybody else is saying. Awesome for the community, everybody that helped out, people like Fluke giving us keys to give away, all the super chatters that we had. I want to thank all the companies out there that may have sent us a game key or a VR cover facial insert, or, whatever, things like that. Definitely appreciate all of that. It was really cool. And the other thing I'll say too, though, like meeting Gary and Steve and Chris, like actually meeting Chris in person. I really wish I could have met Gary and Steve. Like, what if we were all at Oculus Connect 6? How cool would that have been? But meeting real life friends, and I don't think we're ever going to like completely disappear. Like, we're going to keep in contact with each other. And also, I still feel like there may be more VR Roundtable shows at some, like, I really don't think this is the very, very final episode. I really think we'll be back. It may be incredibly sporadic, but I think we're going to be back. Also, for the audiences that are out there, you still got F Reality, you got Coffee in VR, you got Virtual Strangers, you got Gamertag's podcast at Gamertag VR, the podcast that he does.
VR Link,
VR Link, yeah, and so there's probably other ones I'm forgetting about as well. So there's stuff out there. So it's not the end of the world. And just thanks for everything. Super appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So, I think the other guys have said everything that I would have said anyway. So thank you very much one final time for joining us. And we'll be back. We'll be back one day.
That's like a horrible cliffhanger to a Netflix series.
Right. Anyway, let's end this, and we'll see you hopefully in VR or on the Discord, or sometime. Anyway, we'll catch up. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.